This episode of the Connected Design Podcast is brought to you by our partners at Oasis Residential Technology Group. Oasis is a community built for high-achieving residential custom integrators. With valuable vendor partnerships, a powerful peer community, and tools and industry-leading resources available from day one, Oasis helps integrators achieve more together. Learn more about Oasis Residential Technology Group at oasisgroup.org. That's OASYS group.org. All right, we are back on the Connected Design Podcast and excited to dive into the world. Hiring is an important thing, I think. You kind of need people in your business to run your business. Saying that as a self-employed one-man band, it's kind of ironic for me to say, but I appreciate the opportunity to dive into this space. Maybe I'll learn a little something. I think that's where we're getting at having you on, Mr. Chris Smith, principal of the Co-Team. I need advice, I think.
Just for you. I love it. Yeah, that's all right. Podcast one of one.
No, that's awesome. So, how are you, man? How are things going?
I'm doing really well. It's good to see you. I love catching up with you at all the events and things. I'm glad we could sit down and chat.
Absolutely. And it was awesome to see you. And funny enough, I think we talked about it there. It was the Oasis Summit that we were at. And we were talking about doing a podcast, and I was like thinking through ideas of what we could talk about. And the next thing I know, you're up on stage doing everything I wanted to do. So I could have just recorded that and saved us both the time and published that as an episode. But no, it's awesome to be able to dive into that with you. And, we certainly appreciate you taking the time and being willing to jump in with us. So
thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Before all that, though, I want to give you the chance to paint the picture because I think it's important. It'll help shape sort of the rest of the conversation and narrative that we go through here, but paint your background for us, for those that don't know who you are and kind of your path to becoming principal at the Co-Team.
Yeah. So Chris Smith with the Co-Team, we help companies hire. I came from this space, been in the CI industry about 26 years now. It's a little crazy to think about and kind of wacky that it's been that long. But my kind of history is broken up almost equally in chunks, and we'll for sake of conversation, we'll call them about 5-year chunks, give or take. So I started my world in custom integration actually as an installer, right? Pulling wires, getting dirty in attic spaces and construction sites, and installing systems. And then I learned how to program, and then I was doing some kind of project management and sales, and so I kind of grew up through the integrator side of the industry. And then I had an opportunity to move over to Bowers and Wilkins. I became actually a national trainer for them. And that then turned into being a salesperson. That salesperson, the territory just kind of grew. And then at some point, Macintosh Labs came knocking, and I became a director of sales. And in that world, I was managing teams of people. And then that just kind of grew. And then eventually the company transacted, and I was part of that transaction when it sold into the Fine Sounds Group. So I got to be part of its M&A. So I got to learn a lot about that whole process. And then we launched the Macintosh Townhouse in New York. And so I was a part of that project. And then we need an integrator to help us do that. I got to meet a company called Cloud9 Smart. I then started working back on the integrator side after 10 years and got to kind of implement all the things that I had seen that I'd really liked about companies that I'd worked with for many, many years, and then kind of avoid all the pitfalls. So I ran an integration company in New York City for 5 years, ultimately becoming the CEO. I wasn't an equity partner in that business. I left to start up my own company. And what I realized was that I wanted to do kind of coaching consulting work. And that coaching consulting work was really about helping companies run their businesses better, make more money, et cetera. And what came out of that was two things, and they were both people related. One was I would grow my business and scale it, but I can't find the humans I need to do that. I kept hearing that over and over and over again. And the second was, hey, I've got this guy in the back, and he's all right, or maybe he sucks, and I'd rather get rid of him, but I can't find anybody to replace him, so I feel like I'm stuck with him. And those themes kept coming up. And so what came out of that was really, and I'm a big fan of give value. So I started presenting a presentation back about hiring best practices. And that presentation was not monetarily valuable to me. It was really a means to an end for kind of ideal clients for us. And so somebody approached me after that and just said, would you just do that for us? And that really shifted my thinking about should my company be in this kind of domain expertise of coaching and consulting work, which wasn't particularly scalable and was really just about me and helping somebody? Or should it be around the hiring side, and that's highly scalable and we could do it across this industry, and now we're also doing it outside of this industry? And so it really kind of shifted us into that world. And last year alone, we placed 181 people. We've broken 500 hires as a company, which is really cool. And in, prior to starting this year, we were about 450. So you see like the idea that the business just keeps growing and scaling. And we've now been doing this outside of this industry as well. So the same method and process works. And what we really do is I looked at the recruitment model and just said it's kind of broken. What would it look like if it was exactly the opposite? So we went with a very low cost model, hourly based, aligned with the mutual interests of our clients. And then we do this across every conceivable position within a business. So it's crazy to think about. We're now international. We're selling into Canada. We have rep firms across the country. It's like pretty cool what it's become. And it wasn't its intention when it started, but it was like, we're here now. It feels really cool.
No, that's awesome. I'm glad you brought up those numbers, because that was going to be my next point, is like the proof is kind of in the pudding for you guys, or all the data really. The fact that you are being successful with this model, and it is scaling and growing, and like not just placing people either, like, right. They're successful hires and things like that. So talk about that a little bit, and the background too. Like the reason I wanted you to talk about it, because you initially launching, you started for the manufacturer and the integrator side, obviously having the experience of both. So those things just sort of the snowball effect, right? But like you guys are, experiencing that momentum, and it's paying off.
It's really neat. Yeah. And I think, so some things that are interesting about this, we have a really high success rate. Last year, we had a 91% fill rate, which is really cool. That's like 3 times higher than like a standard recruiter. And we're doing it for a fraction of the price. So net, we kind of like to joke we're about 10 times more effective than a recruiter dollar for dollar. And so we think that the model is actually proving itself to work really well. Within that, we have a 99% happen within 10 hours. So it means that we're doing it within the time frame that's been allotted to us. And while it's not a perfect fill rate, I don't know that there ever could be, right? I don't know that there's a way to make that happen. And by the way, if there was, I'd really like to make sure it happens in our business. Like that is where we're headed. How do we do this better and better and better? And so in terms of kind of other stats that are really interesting, 2/3 of our companies come back and make second, third, fourth hires. And on average, we do about 3 hires per client so far. I don't know what that will look like in 3, 4, and 5 years of having clients, but that's where we stand today.
Yeah, having the return customer at all, I think, speaks volumes to what you guys are doing and the fact that they trust it.
Yeah, it's working for them. They want to come back. And so our best client last year hired 20 people. Wow. That's crazy to think about. And so we look at the dollar for dollar value of that, and we go, you couldn't hire a single human inside of your organization to do what we do for the price we charge them. So it's a pretty cost effective model. And so we think it's really kind of disruptive. And we obviously have a vision for propagating this into other verticals as well, because we see it working in other verticals today. And so it's been fun building. It's really cool. Yeah. And it's really cool to think about the legacy that we're leaving, which is actually really great quality humans inside of other businesses, and what that does for those people and their families, but the business and their families.
Right.
Like it feels really meaningful, and it's exciting to be a part of that.
Yeah. Now I know you guys are relative in the grand scheme of things new, right? So like still a young company. So this next question may be a little unfair to ask, but like, do you know the staying power of those employees? Like, are they lasting within the company?
Yeah, it's a really good question. We don't actually know. So sometimes we have a hard time getting our current clients who actually did make a hire to tell us they made a hire. So like to get them to follow up with us and tell us that somebody's still there or not, we don't know that stat. The only kind of inductive reasoning that we have around it is that they come back to ask us to make further hires. That's the kind of, it seems like that's working really well. And it seems like the testimonials that we get after we do our work are quite high. And so we'll be at trade shows and we'll mic people up and say, hey, just tell us about using your experience with us. And all of those seem to be pretty positive. Again, we don't think perfect, but I think we're on our way to making more people happy than not by a long shot.
Yeah, for sure. The other thing that, aside from the staying power, the other question you hear a lot in this space, especially around hiring or just integrators in general is that talent gap, right? That they have trouble finding people. I mean, you guys going out there, like, are you when you're out there looking? Is there like, are you? I know it can be again maybe an unfair thing to ask, but like because different markets are different, and the amount of talent in a New York City may be different than a Davenport, Iowa. But like, are you seeing are you seeing that? Like, is that a fair assessment? Like, is there really a talent gap, or what do you guys? What's your assessment of that?
Yeah, it's a really great question. I think you have people with technical skills that exist in markets, but obviously in smaller markets, there are few of those people with those technical skills. So I think that's a real problem,
Yeah,
especially in secondary and tertiary markets. But it's a real problem in major metro markets, to be really honest. That's not to say anything about any market or any company. This is a real issue. And I think it's worth diving into the why part.
yeah,
The second part is there are some people with these technical skills who are absolutely not the right human to hire for a team. So when you talk about like a skills gap, I think there are people who have skills that I would never, ever in a million years after interviewing them, put them in front of one of my clients. Like that's not right for the team
hmm
that you put them in front of. And it's not right for the owner of that business. This is not the human you should hire, even if they have the skills. And so I think there's kind of two components here. Let's go address the technical, like very
yeah,
practically. Our industry is tiny, tiny. So to say I only want people with technical skills of a given ilk, that's not a really great hiring strategy because it's just not practical. You won't get to where you want to go. So now what you could say is, are there people who are one or two or three rings out from the dartboard who have foundational skills that are very similar to ours that we could train and build into the people that we want? 100% yes. And the people who are winning that hiring game are open-minded to that. So if I could encourage one thing, whether you use us or don't use us, or use a different service or don't use them and you do it yourself, doesn't matter. Be super open-minded to that, because the organizations that are winning are building training and development organizations inside of their walls. So that conquers the skills gap, assuming you've got the right foundational skill of the human.
right, right,
I think separately is this question about hiring for longevity of the human. Like, are we really putting people on our teams that are amazing? And if we're putting people on our teams that are amazing, they have staying power. We want them to be a part of our organization. We want them to grow into whatever the thing is that they want to do within our organization. And so that to me is the other big takeaway here, is not just the skills gap. It's the finding the right human to build your team.
yeah. No, I love all of that, and what comes to mind hearing that is like that. What I imagine the biggest struggle for someone hiring is they're looking for like that unicorn, right? Like they want they have this ideal person in mind, and they're not willing to waver from that or be open to your point, like the dart. I love that dartboard model too, right? Because there's like that unicorn is the bullseye, but then if you go out a few layers, what other types of talent are out there that you could that are moldable into, they become that unicorn for you.
And there's a lot of that, by the way.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people out there who are looking for their next opportunity because wherever they're at is capped. And maybe it's the technical nature of those jobs just won't allow for anything beyond it. Maybe their organizations don't have training and development paths because those people are short-sighted. I mean, there's so many ways to think about that. But there are plenty of people who are looking for that opportunity who actually are good humans. And I think for the folks that are open-minded to it, they have a real first mover advantage to saying yes to those people. You don't have to hire them. All I would suggest is that you talk to them.
Yeah.
And there's so many people who would just throw that resume away and like not even think about it. And I think that's short. But yeah, I think looking for the unicorn, sometimes we call it if the fish jumps in the boat, right? But I wouldn't build my strategy on only looking for those. That I think is the key takeaway.
Now, without calling out, and I don't even know if any would come to mind right off the bat, without calling out like the specific company or person, like does any example of that, sort of outer ring individual come to mind of like an integrator was looking for a very specific, type of installer or someone that fit their team perfectly, but like what is that parallel industry that they came from? Like any example of something like
Right.
that comes to mind?
Yeah, I think obviously so. Many of our clients are target market CI and specifically residential CI. So I think that's an important statement to say what would Target Center look like here. And I think a few places out from that, we love commercial guys. commercial guys come from audio, video, control systems. They tend to usually be weaker in, say, networks, because that usually goes to a different subcontractor. And they tend to not have really lighting and shading understanding. But if you show me a guy who's been installing QSys control systems and programming QSys, you could teach that guy anything we do, anything, right? And so you show me a guy with a great disposition, right, who's been doing QSys work, I want to talk to that guy. Now, to be fair, there are commercial people who don't like working in residential settings. It's like a very real thing. We actually ask about it. But, you know, there's an example. Another example is, let's talk about the people who are on an upward trajectory but hit a ceiling in their current employer. So a really common version of that is what we call pull term test guys. And so from the cabling world, and I don't mean cable television, I mean cabling infrastructure, they pull a wire from here to there, they terminate it, they mount a device at the end of it. They tend to do rack and stack work where they actually build an equipment rack, and then they usually lace that rack up. Those guys, their contract caps at something like that. So if they've done that for a while, they are really proficient at it and they do really beautiful work. I mean, picture worthy work. Some guys will call it rack porn, right? Like that.
That's the term. If you didn't say it, I was gonna.
So those guys do that, and you go, okay, so like, what's the next thing for you? Well, they don't have a next thing. Their contracts don't allow them to touch anything beyond that. So if you ask them about control systems, for them, it's just a box that sits at the end of a wire. They don't really like know what it does. They kind of have like an idea, but they're not trained on it. But if you explain to that guy, cool, I'm going to teach you the rest of control systems, and now I'm going to teach you what a lighting panel does and what a shading panel does, they pick that up super fast. Like, that is not the thing that's limiting them. Now, some of them won't make it all the way to programming or configuration because that's maybe not their interest or ability, but they could take that next level of install and crush that without question. Those people make amazing hires, and we've done that a ton. So last year alone, 40% of the hires that we made were technicians. That's 72 technicians across the country. Wow. So when people say, like, I can't find a technician, well, is it because you're looking for an Elan programmer? Right. Is it because you're looking for some very like odd esoteric skill set that just doesn't exist at scale? Now, if on the other hand, what you said was, I want a person who's really proficient in install, knows how to hang a picture straight, and can run the wire from here to there and make it look clean, there's lots of guys that can do that. My question would be, are you open-minded to talking to the people that aren't your historical demographic? Right. Security guys, amazingly interesting people. Like, security guys are wiring up panels. Like, if you can explain to me how a relay works, you can do all sorts of stuff, right? And there's all sorts of people that come from that world that are used to wiring those up by hand. There's guys who are doing programmable logic controllers, PLC work from the electrical space. If you understand how a PLC works, you can do any lighting panel on the planet. No, that's awesome. Like, you start to think about those things and you go, would I be open-minded if I found a human like that who was interested in my job? I would at least want to talk to them. And out of those, we're only looking for the top 2 to 3% of people that are worthy of like that next round. So it's a very stringent criteria.
And you have to figure that someone that's in the market for a job, like they're willing to, you know, at least entertain the idea of talking to they may have a dream job in their mind, but at the very same sort of scenario, right, where they may want to open up their, you know, target a few rings to make sure that like what other opportunities are out there. The other side of it too is to your point of the being able to mold someone into that center target. Like, when you hire someone, that's not like the end of it. Right, so they're constantly learning. You as a business owner, you as you know, in your job, should constantly be learning and evolving and trying to add to your skill set. So, you know, when you're hiring someone for a role, you got to imagine that they're going to do that as well.
Oh man, how interesting is this question? This makes me think back when I was actually pretty young. I was talking to an employer at the time. He had 4 children with his high school sweetheart. And I said, how do you like know? How do you know when like that's the person for you? And he goes, you're actually not marrying them. You're marrying the person you hope they become. And I thought that was a really like fantastic takeaway, because I think hiring in some ways is kind of like that. I'm looking for potential in people. Yes, I want foundational skill. I want to know what you can do, and all of that's really important. But I want to look at this and say, where could I take this? Like, where could I conceivably grow to with this individual? What does hiring this particular individual enable my company to do right now? Like, what does it get us in the path of going towards? And that's a really different way of thinking, because I think a lot of people are just going like, well, if it doesn't immediately solve this massive problem that I envision in my head, I'm not doing it. And I go, okay, so you could watch those people, and then in 6 months from now, they're still fence sitting. And so for me, I think this question about making decisions, iterating, learning, growing, trying, all of that matters, assuming that you've got the right people on board, right humans, right disposition, right kind of thought process. That really goes a long way. And I think you see a lot of people just continue to fence sit and never execute. So my question is always like, unicorn hunting, how's that going for you? Right? Fence sitting, how's that going for you? You're like, oh, I'm exactly the same size I was 3 years ago.
Yeah.
Okay, well, then maybe there's a different way to kind of think about that.
No, it's makes a lot of sense. And I mean, I have to imagine too, the understanding that it's an investment. Yes, there's some immediate payoff, right? Of they come in and, you know, they're gonna have to integrate themselves into your business and understand how things work, things like that. But at the same time, it's like it's the start of a journey. So you gotta have a little bit of more, you know, more foresight into what's to come with that individual or with your company. So where, you know, it you don't land on that center target individual, but if you aim for someone maybe that has a, you know, a few years less experience or something like that, a better investment for your business that they can grow into that, you know, unicorn that you were looking for.
Yeah, exactly right. A networking guy who's got CCNA skills, a 900-page course catalog. If he could learn CCNA or she could learn CCNA, you don't think we could send them to Lutron class?
Right.
Like that's the kind of stuff I start to think about, and I go, so who are those people, and like what would we do with them if given the opportunity?
Yep.
So I think that's really, really strong. Yeah, super important.
I feel like we've talked about a lot of what could be the common pitfalls, but you know, are there any things that stand out as far as, you know, the, you know, other common missteps or things you see in the hiring prod? Not necessarily asking you to give away like your guys' ingredients or secret sauce, but like, you know, what other advice from, you know, I think back to the session that you gave and you know, the presentation that you had and things that would stand out that, you know, would be beneficial for an integrator looking to hire someone to hear.
Yeah. So you brought up one just before this question where you were talking about, you know, like I'll synthesize and say, what's the plan for this individual? So when we bring on employees internally, one of the things that we think about is what's the training period for that individual? The easy way to think about that is a 30, 60, 90-day plan. What do we expect out of this individual at each of those places? The other way to think about it is, and at what point will they then become billable if they're a cost of goods employee? If they were a salesperson, at what point do they start selling or closing deals, right? So you start to think about like trajectory and arc for this person. I don't think many people are writing 30, 60, 90-day plans for their people with AI. Never been easier, by the way, right? So feel free to go use that tool. I think the 30, 60, 90-day plan, for instance, when we hire an employee, we have a 90-day window where at the end of that 90 days, we want them to be billable out to the outside world. So what we've actually realized is even within that, we can shorten that down to 60 days. Now, could we get it to 45 or even 30 days, like practically, and still have the quality be as good? Or could we have it fractionally billable at some level and with a safety net and then have them growing? And so I think this question about the evolution of your 30, 60, 90-day plan, the hiring side's really important. The interviewing side's really important. The closing the deal with an offer letter is really important. But now it's like, if we're the dog that caught the bumper, what do we do with it? And I think that question for people is that's the 30, 60, 90. That plan is everything. Now, that plan will be slightly different for this individual than this individual because of where they're starting from and coming from, like where their trajectory is or was, and then where we want them to get to. Now, if they start day one with that plan known and you start it, everyone is on the same page about what those expectations are.
Yeah.
And I think what's really great about that is if you do that well, you build stickiness, you build the ability to keep them within your orbit and they don't spin out. So if you're losing humans after you seal the deal, that's your sign to say, well, what's my onboarding process? And I don't mean onboarding like you filled in your tax document and we got you on our health insurance. That's not the onboarding I'm talking about. still necessary.
Yeah.
But I think that question about the plan is really crucial.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sep-
Absolutely.
Separately, like a big one is pay scale. This is where we like ruffle feathers a bit. This is really important, like really important that you think deeply about what the market is currently offering in competition to you. I actually don't much care what your buying group says. I don't much care what CDIA says. I don't much care what you currently pay your employees. None of that matters. What matters is looking at how would I land the talent I need to get the work done I have to do.
Mm-hmm.
If everything requires you to be at this level and everyone else you were talking to is over here, that doesn't help you very much. And so I think the real takeaway here isn't that they're all wrong. It's make sure you validate this with the current marketplace. That's a really key takeaway. And you can do this for free using tools that are out there like Indeed. You can look and see what jobs are posting. You want to be competitive in that space. The second part that people will say is, well, then I only want to look at my competitors, right? It's like, no, no, no. You want to look at, as we talked about rings from the dartboard.
Yep.
So what are the building management system people paying? What's the security guy paying? What are the cable pulling technicians making? All of that will help really calibrate, but it does a second thing really well. It helps you firm up your moat around your organization so that you don't lose the current humans you have.
Yep. Yep.
That takeaway, I think, is not happening. Everyone is so busy running their businesses, which I get, that makes tons of sense. But then they're like, hey, I haven't really done that analysis these days. I don't really know. And if you're thinking back that way, you're going to run into the back end of a bus.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that is the takeaway. And now we're just then refilling more seats at the top of this organization. Right.
Right.
That's really hard. And I think that's probably the thing I don't see happening enough is true coherency around what the marketplace is offering in terms of competitors a few rings out.
Yeah. Both of those things I want to dive into separately just because you're just wrapping it up. The paying side of things, we'll start there. It's almost like the resting on your laurels, right? Like you don't want to get comfy thinking that, the last thing you want to think about is one of your current employees looking elsewhere. But hey, it's a reality. It's going to happen, and especially to your point, if the pay scale is off within your business, not even just with someone that you're looking to hire. So, if someone's looking for a job, and your company happens to be in that orbit of where they're looking, who's to say? You have to imagine that someone within could be looking elsewhere as well. So, understanding what to your point, not just your competitors, but other like jobs could be offering, is it enough that would sway them to leave and go somewhere else? And then there's the whole cost of them having to refill that position that just, became empty.
100%. You're exactly right. I think we are in an interesting position because when we get called in to help companies hire, we're often asking, so what happened? Why are we hiring for this? Now, some cases they're growing, right? So we're adding bodies. In other cases, somebody has left. Now, there's reasons that people leave that aren't pay related. Hey, they're relocating to be closer to family members or all sorts of things. But one common thing that happens is they're leaving to go outside of the industry. So if that's true for people that are leaving your organization, why can't we be hiring people to come into our industry? Mm-hmm. Right? Pretty cool thing to think about. And the second is you should be looking at your competition outside of our industry so that you have some relative comprehension of what you're competing with.
Yeah.
And I think that that's a really, really good takeaway. Now, by the way, your point about your employees could be looking and seeing, all the data we're looking at is publicly available. Mm-hmm. Like none of it requires a subscription. All of it is exactly what your current employees could see if they just took 5 minutes of time to go look.
Right. And who's to say they're not putzing around LinkedIn? Like who's on LinkedIn every day? Most people, right? So, those are out there. And even if I'm sitting here as a business owner myself, and I still get fed the LinkedIn job post. Like it's just the algorithm is doing it. So even if they're not specifically looking, they may just have something that gets into their feed that sparks their interest and makes them think, oh, I wonder. And that's all it could. That might be all it takes.
I'll give you an example. We don't often use LinkedIn for promoting a hire because it's not common, but every once in a while there's a reason why it makes good sense. So we're helping a client hire, and they're hiring for a director of sales. And so we say, hey, this would be a good potential sponsorship opportunity on LinkedIn. So we go and we put the sponsorship up with them. And I open up my LinkedIn and I am served the ad for that job, which I thought was like, okay, like
No.
the thing is working, right? It's like,
All
you'd be a
right.
good fit for this.
That's
So,
awesome.
I think that that's really interesting. Like these tools work correctly when applied well. And so I think, know what you're working with, et cetera. The
That's
other
awesome.
thing that you got me thinking about in potential like problems, right? So like
Yeah.
structurally, and we can figure out when we want to talk about these, but you know, what are we posting out there? What's the ad? Like that's a really important
Yeah.
distinction. So be thinking about that. And does it feel like really engaging? Where are we posting it? So this ties to the LinkedIn question versus say Indeed. Like there are things to think about here about where does my ideal person shop for jobs, right?
Right.
And most jobs are not actually on LinkedIn. It's actually not where a lot of technicians are going. It doesn't mean they're not there, but
Right.
Indeed's way better as an example. How are we doing our interviews and scheduling for that? What are we interviewing for? Like, are we interviewing just for technical, or are we interviewing for personality fit? Are we interviewing for comp relevance? What does that look like? What's our next round of interview look like after that? So we've talked to people who actually have businesses for years and don't have a process around hiring. They just don't they're just gut checking it when somebody comes in and you're like, wow, how's
Huh.
that working? A guy who's really honest about it this week goes, I don't know, about 50-50. And I went like,
Oh
like,
man.
wow. And
Okay.
he heard himself saying it. He knew it wasn't what he wanted. And so I think that takeaway is like, what does that, and is it getting better? Are we improving that process
Right.
incrementally each time we do it? And so then I think about, great, like, are we doing skills assessments for people? When do we do that? Should we be using personality assessments? When do we do that? And there are like good and bad things for each of these. So none of them are all like, just go all in and don't
Right.
think about it. It's like, how are we doing it and why? And so I think if people are a big component of your business, and at least AI hasn't fully like consumed the world yet, so like there's still going to be some amount of humans for at least a few more years, I would think. So like I think that the people on your team like really matter. And so if that's really true, are we spending as much time on that as we are on like the stuff we're
Right.
installing and the vendors we buy from? That's probably a good cross check for your amount of time investment and thought
Yeah, and
process around it.
I mean, it all, and this even I think goes back and applies to the after the hire and the onboarding, like the again, not the logistical onboarding, the training, the plan of integrating them into your business. No pun intended on integrator, but
Yeah.
it's being intentional about it, and you want to be as intentional about the hiring process from start to finish, from the moment you need to hire, so you make the decision that you're going to hire someone, to when they become fully integrated into your team, the same way you would about a project, like going into someone's home or office, and like you want to make that client happy. At the end of the day, the hiring process, your business is that client, right? You want to make sure that you are finding someone that is going to mesh, fit the culture of what you're trying to create there, which that's a whole separate conversation around culture that we could dive into. But like it's being as intentional about the hiring process as you would be for a client that you're, whatever project it might be that you're working on.
Your word of intentional is really important here. One of our core values, and we have 5 of them, is intentional. And so being intentional in everything that you do and how you do it and why you do it, it matters. And so the question I think for a lot of people when they go to hiring is, are they actually being intentional about it, or are they being reactive?
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh my gosh, my hair's on fire. Someone just quit. I need a body right now. Like that's not intentional. That is coming from a position of stress, and it will increase your likelihood of making a poor decision or a short-term decision as opposed to the right long-term decision. And so I think your intentionality question is really, really crucial here. The other one, like you talked about process, or we were kind of saying like, hey, we want a project to go well. Well, that starts to sound like project management, and project management is indeed a process. So here's the question I always ask every group whenever we sit in front of them is, can you show me your hiring process? And when I say show me, that's very easy because you can literally hold up the document that
Yeah.
describes it and visualizes it. If you don't have one of those, I would make one. And you could make one for free, right? You just need to sit down and like think about this step happens, then this step happens, and then what happens if. So we literally have a workflow that shows people how that goes. And we did that because people kept asking us, so how does it work? So how does it work? And so rather than writing out the same answer every time, I just made one visual and that's what we follow. So what's yours in your business? And I think as you think that through, don't just know that you have one, like show me. Because if you show me, you can show the applicant what your process is like. You can show the people internal to your organization what your process is like and how you're going to get there. And then you can also show me where it's not working well.
Yeah.
Hey, like right here, everything else is great, but right here, we could do this step better. Okay, cool. Let's go and work on that step. And then now we know that if we ever made a bad hire for whatever reason, we've got that feedback loop to come back and fix the machine, and that won't happen again. Right. If it's visualized, and our buddy Jason Sayin has a really great way of saying it, 70% of people are visual learners. Come back to your process and go, it's right here. That's the thing I want to get better at. And if you can do that, you actually, it becomes a locus of control for you to fix it, as opposed to it being like, man, I hope that never happens again. Right?
Yeah, right. It takes the guesswork out of it, and it creates, and I feel like this could, so many ways to go, but like understanding that it creates consistency, which like being intentional and being consistent, ultimately breeds the culture of the organization. Like it all just makes too much sense to me. But I know, without sounding like I'm oversimplifying it and all that good stuff, but like it's still, it's easy to talk about, hard to implement, I have to imagine.
Yeah, people can own these things for not a lot of capital, but it is a little bit of time, right? Mm-hmm. And so there's time investment in that. And I think the takeaway I would have for that, though, it's not hard, right? It's not hard to do. It just takes a little bit of time, but it has a high return on its investment, and you can lever the same tool repeatedly.
Yeah.
In other words, we're not making a tool that's so obscure you use it one time every once in a while and it's not a big deal if you didn't have it. You're like, oh no, we need that tool. Like this makes everything go better.
Yeah.
I think if you can perceive it that way, it makes the small amount of time investment you put into it really easy to think about. And I understand everyone's busy running a million miles an hour, but I think the analog is, going out to cut wood with a dull saw or a dull axe. It pays you back pretty quickly when you sharpen it.
Oh, that's awesome. I feel like we could go, again, a million different directions and ways, but at the same time, I want to be cognizant of people's time and yours and my time as well. So I feel like this is not a one-time conversation for sure, but I appreciate you at least, setting the table for future appearances on this podcast. And it was a lot of fun, man, to dive into it. And it's such an important aspect of the business that, it's easy to talk about the products and like the sexy things that are out there, but like, I think you can make hiring sexy. I really do. I think there's ways to do it. So.
I'm not the marketing guy. I probably wouldn't be able to tell, but I appreciate you having me on to talk about it. I think you're 100% right about the value of people in the organization. I think that, these should all feel important to people, and it should feel, to your point, intentional. We're excited about the opportunity to do what we're doing in this with our organization in this industry. And I look at the potential upside for businesses by doing it well. And I go, why wouldn't you just do these things well? And so what we've realized, though, is that those people are really busy. They're busy running their businesses. Yep. And so we've become an added value in being able to be kind of a bandwidth opportunity for them. Hey, we can take on that portion that you would like to do well. You just don't have time to do well yourself. Or the answer is you guys are busy growing. And as you're busy growing, you've outgrown your ability to do the hiring the way you had it. So, hey, we can come in and do that. We love working with those companies who are in that space, and they just go, it's not our favorite thing to do, and we don't have enough time to do it. And hey, it's not what we do every day. And we're like, let's outsource that. And there are a bunch of companies in our industry who are doing variations of that for components of businesses. Yep. And we're excited to kind of be in that services suite mentality for companies like this.
Yeah, and it's if you haven't had the opportunity, and I mean the listener or watcher of this, to see Chris at a show or connect with them, I'd highly encourage you to do so, because it's engaging. I've seen it not in a one-on-one setting, but like in the group settings, and getting people to think and how they react to what you present is, it's awesome and kind of eye-opening for them for sure, and inspiring for me to be able to watch it happen in person. So certainly encourage you to check out the Co-Team and everything Chris has going on. But man, this was a lot of fun. I look forward to doing it again soon.
Thanks, Rob. We really appreciate you hearing us out.
This episode of the Connected Design Podcast is brought to you by our partners at Oasis Residential Technology Group. Oasis is a community built for high-achieving residential custom integrators. With valuable vendor partnerships, a powerful peer community, and tools and industry-leading resources available from day one, Oasis helps integrators achieve more together. Learn more about Oasis Residential Technology Group at oasisgroup.org. That's OASYS group.org.